The sun shone brightly over the city, illuminating the busy streets and the hustle and bustle of people. In the heart of this vibrant scene, Dr. Rafael Santos walked to the courtroom, his steady step and proud posture reflecting the confidence he had built over the years. He was a black judge, a symbol of justice and integrity in a community that often still struggled with deep-rooted prejudices. Rafael believed that his position was not just a job title. It was a responsibility to promote equality and inspire others to fight for a more just world. In the courtroom, his penetrating gaze scrutinized the cases unfolding before him. The way he treated each one with respect and empathy made him a judge admired by both his colleagues and those who came to the court seeking justice. Among young lawyers just starting out in their careers, Rafael was often cited as a role model. He made a point of mentoring new talent, offering valuable advice and lessons. After a long morning of hearings, Rafael decided to take a break. He walked to the park near the courthouse, where the trees swayed gently in the wind, providing an oasis of tranquility. It was a moment he cherished, away from the pressures of the courtroom. As he walked, he thought about his family. Anna, his wife, was a fundamental partner in his life, always by his side, supporting him in all his battles. They met in law school, and their union was marked by love and mutual respect. Lucas, his 10-year-old son, was the light of his eyes. Rafael remembered the nights he would read stories to him, and how the boy's curious questions challenged him to look at the world with new eyes. He dreamed of one day becoming a lawyer, just like his father. These memories warmed his heart as Rafael headed home that afternoon, filled with hope and determination. Life continued as usual, marked by challenges and achievements. However, something unexpected was about to change all that. Unbeknownst to him, an incident that would shake his career and personal life was approaching, ready to transform his reality into a fight for truth and dignity. It was a sunny Friday when Rafael decided to surprise Anna with a birthday gift. After an intense day at the courthouse, he remembered that she had always dreamed of a designer bracelet she had seen in a luxury store downtown. Excited about making his wife happy, he planned to visit the store right after work. Upon arrival, Rafael was greeted by an elegant attendant who led him into a brightly lit area filled with sparkling jewelry. The ambience was welcoming, with soft music playing in the background and the sweet scent of fresh flowers. As he gazed at the pieces on display, he imagined Anna wearing the bracelet, radiant and happy. The joy of the moment, however, would be abruptly interrupted. As he was deciding between two options, Rafael noticed a security guard watching him suspiciously. A chill ran down his spine, but he quickly dismissed the thought. He was a respected judge, someone who had dedicated his life to justice. There was nothing wrong with admiring jewelry, he thought. However, just as he made his choice and headed to the cashier, the security guard approached, blocking his path. "You need to step back," the security guard said in an authoritative tone. "We suspect you're trying to steal." Rafael was stunned. "Excuse me? I'm just buying a gift for my wife," he replied, trying to remain calm. But his words were ignored, and the security guard insisted on searching him. Tensions rose as other customers began to pay attention. Rafael, feeling humiliation rising within him, tried to explain the situation, but his attempts were met with laughter and snide comments. He looked around, noticing the judgmental looks, the cell phone cameras raised to film the embarrassing moment. Indignation gave way to shame, and the pain of injustice began to tighten his chest. Amidst the commotion, he found himself being handcuffed and led out of the store under the curious gaze of a crowd. The scene, marked by laughter and murmurs, was something he had never imagined experiencing. What should have been a day of celebration had turned into a public nightmare, where his name and reputation were being tarnished by a simple misunderstanding. As he was led to the police car, Rafael thought about Anna, Lucas, and how this situation could affect their lives. He felt the weight of injustice, a weight that now seemed unbearable, and doubts began to invade his mind. What would happen from that moment on? Silence hung in the air as Rafael was led into the police car, the sound of handcuffs echoing like a cruel reminder of his reality. He tried to process what had just happened, but outrage and shame dominated his thoughts. The crowd's gazes pierced him, each one a silent accusation, a declaration that he was a criminal. The laughter and whispers became a constant echo in his mind. The scene unfolded like a nightmare. Raphael remembered how secure he had felt in his own skin, in his profession, in his life. But now, insecurity invaded every fiber of his being. How could this happen to me? He asked himself over and over, his frustration growing with each step. He was a judge, someone who had dedicated his life to justice, and now he found himself being treated like a common thief. The repercussions were swift and devastating. As soon as images of the incident began to circulate on social media, the story took on a life of its own. Posts multiplied and news spread, distorting the facts and turning Raphael into a caricature of a thief. The press soon became interested in the case, and soon Raphael's name became synonymous with scandal. When night fell, he was released, but the sense of relief soon dissipated in the face of the reality that awaited him. When Raphael returned home, he found Anna in the living room, her eyes red from crying. The hug they were supposed to share at the end of the day had turned into a moment of pain. "I can't believe this happened," Anna said, her voice shaking, filled with sadness and disbelief. "How could they do this to you?" Raphael tried to comfort her, but his words seemed hollow. He sat down, feeling the weight of humiliation, the sensational headlines, the media speculation, the way people looked at him. It was all a blow to his dignity. He was a symbol of justice, and now he found himself in the position of being judged and condemned by those who did not know the truth. The phone kept ringing. Friends and colleagues called, but Raphael didn't know how to explain the inexplicable. Disillusionment grew within him as he imagined the repercussions on his career. The confidence he had built over the years was crumbling. To the outside world, he was just another case to be discussed on social media, an example of how prejudice still permeated society. That night, as he lay beside Anna, Raphael lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. The words he had spoken so many times in court now echoed in his memory. "Justice is blind," he thought, "but injustice is all too visible." He wondered how he could face this battle that awaited him, how he could regain his honor and his life. In the darkness, a determination began to emerge. Raphael knew he could not allow this humiliation to define who he was. He was more than what had happened in that store. And even though the fight would be difficult, he was determined to prove his innocence and reclaim his dignity. The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster. Raphael and Anna were struggling not only with the weight of the public humiliation, but also with the repercussions on their family life. Lucas, who had once lit up the house with his joy, now seemed to carry the burden of despair that hung over his parents. When he came home from school, he would often come home with the expression of someone carrying a painful secret, and Raphael knew that his son was struggling to come to terms with the situation. That Monday morning, Raphael decided he needed to talk to Lucas. He sat the boy down across from him, on the same couch where they had so often told stories and shared laughs. "Lucas, I want you to know that what happened is not true," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Some people make judgments without knowing the truth, and that's not fair." The boy's look was one of confusion. "But Daddy, I saw it on TV. They said you were trying to rob a store," Lucas replied, his eyes wide. Raphael felt a pang in his heart. How could he explain the complexities of prejudice and injustice to a 10-year-old boy? Sometimes people only see what they want to see and not the truth. "I promise I will fight to show who I really am," he replied, trying to give his son hope. Lucas nodded slowly, but the worry was still evident on his face. Raphael knew the boy's trust in his father was being shaken, and it hurt him deeply. Over the next few days, Raphael stepped away from the courtroom, facing the judgment of society as he searched for ways to restore his reputation. He began collecting evidence, speaking to witnesses, and reviewing store footage. Every step he took was filled with fierce determination. He didn't just want to clear his name. He wanted to ensure this injustice wouldn't happen to anyone else. Anna, always by his side, became a source of strength. She supported him, even when his own feelings were raw. On nights when he spent hours poring over documents, she would cook dinner and try to keep the atmosphere calm. "We'll get through this together," she would say, looking him in the eye as a reminder that he wasn't alone. However, Conversations about what was happening were also inevitable. One night, while they were having dinner, Lucas asked a question that made Raphael's heart sink. "Daddy, will people still believe you're a thief?" The boy's fragile voice echoed in the air, and Raphael felt an urgent need to reassure his son. "Lucas, I will fight for us, for you and for your mother. No one can take who I am from within me," Raphael said, determined. He knew that his fight was not just for his own dignity, but for the dignity of his family. He wanted Lucas to know that courage and truth could triumph over adversity. As the nights passed, Raphael realized that the impact of the humiliation was not only on himself, but on everyone around him. What he had once considered a personal struggle had now become a family battle, and he was determined to win, not only for his reputation, but for his son's future. The fight for the truth became a central focus of Raphael's life. He immersed himself in his investigation, combing through every detail of the incident, speaking to witnesses, and reviewing store security footage. The desire to clear his name and restore his dignity became a vital drive. Each day, he woke up with renewed determination, ready to face the world that had so quickly judged him. Raphael gathered information about what had really happened at the store. He discovered that the security guard who had accused him had a history of aggressive behavior toward black customers, which further fueled his outrage. Talking to other people who had been in the store, he began to piece together a narrative that contradicted the version presented by the store's security guard. Many of them were willing to testify on his behalf, a small consolation amid the chaos. That morning, as he reviewed the footage, Raphael noticed something that could be key to his defense. In the recording, he noticed that a client, a woman with blonde hair, was standing nearby when it all happened. She seemed hesitant to intervene, but Raphael noticed that she moved away as things began to get tense. Her face seemed to reflect confusion and concern, and he made a mental note to look for her later. If he could get her to testify, he might be able to strengthen his case. That afternoon, he decided to visit the store again, determined to find the woman. The idea of confronting the place where everything had happened made him nervous, but the need to get to the truth drove him on. Upon entering, he was immediately recognized by some employees and by a customer who looked at him with contempt. Raphael felt the blood boil in his veins, but he controlled his anger. He needed to be stronger. With his mind focused, he went to the service desk and asked to speak to the manager. After a few minutes of waiting, the man appeared, visibly uncomfortable at the sight of Raphael. "What are you doing here?" he asked, with an accusatory look. "I just want to understand what happened, and I need to find a witness who was here the day I was accused," Raphael replied, keeping his voice calm. He explained about the woman he had seen in the footage and how the truth was essential to his defense. The manager hesitated, but eventually agreed to help him find the woman. As he waited, Raphael sat in a corner of the store, his heart pounding wildly. He reflected on how his world had turned into a whirlwind in a matter of minutes. People walked past him, some giving him looks of contempt, others of compassion. It was a surreal experience, being in a place that had once been associated with moments of joy and had now become an emotional battlefield. When the manager finally brought the woman in, Raphael felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. She introduced herself as Clara, and her look was a combination of sadness and understanding. "I saw everything that happened, but I didn't know how to help," she said, her eyes full of empathy. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." The conversation flowed naturally. Clara explained that she had felt helpless, but was now willing to testify on his behalf. She recalled the events vividly, describing how she had noticed the security guard's aggressive behavior. Raphael realized that she was a valuable ally, and as they talked, a sense of hope began to rise in his chest. After the conversation, Raphael said goodbye to Clara, thanking her sincerely for her willingness to help him. As he left the store, a new determination took hold of him. He was not only fighting for his reputation, but also for justice in a system that often failed to protect the innocent. The fight for the truth had only just begun, and he was prepared to face it with all his might. With Clara by his side, Raphael felt the battle for the truth finally taking shape. Her strength, a witness willing to speak out, was a comfort in the midst of the gathering storm. He knew her words could be the key to reversing the narrative that had condemned him. But he also knew it would not be an easy fight. The prejudice he faced was not just institutional, but rooted in society. In court, the days passed slowly. Raphael eagerly awaited the opportunity to present his defense, but the prosecution's interventions were relentless. They tried to create a negative image of him, using his history as a judge against him, insinuating that he, because he was in office, was incapable of understanding the gravity of his alleged offense. This line of attack made Raphael's blood boil with rage. He was there to defend his honor, not to be a target of insults. One day, while waiting in the courthouse hallway, he ran into an old friend, Tiago, who was unaware of the situation. Tiago was a lawyer who had worked on several civil rights cases. When he heard Raphael's story, his expression changed from surprise to concern. "You know this isn't just a legal battle, right? It's a fight against the prejudices that exist out there," he said, looking Raphael in the eye. The words resonated deeply with him. This became a mantra in his mind. Raphael realized that he couldn't simply fight for his own freedom. He had to do something bigger. He decided that, throughout the process, he would also speak out about the issues of racism and prejudice that permeated society. He wanted his experience to serve as a wake-up call and a reflection on how injustice could affect anyone, regardless of their position. At the next hearing, Raphael decided to face the court head-on. He asked to speak, which surprised both the judge and the prosecution. When he finally got the chance to speak, his words were firm and charged with emotion. "What happened to me is not an isolated case. This is a symptom of a bigger problem. People are so quick to judge that they forget that each of us has a story, a life." The judge looked at him, perhaps for the first time really paying attention to what Raphael was saying. "We are here to seek the truth, but that truth cannot be reached if we do not consider the context that led us here," Raphael continued, gesturing to the audience. "I am a man, a father, a judge. I am not a thief. What happened to me is just a reflection of the mistrust that many face every day. The injustice I faced could very well happen to any of you." The silence that followed was palpable. Raphael could see looks of surprise among the jurors, and even in the audience. He knew he was touching on something profound, something that could resonate beyond his case. He continued to speak about the impact prejudice had on their lives and how that needed to change. "We must not allow appearance or a mistaken judgment to define who we are," he concluded, his voice thick with passion. The prosecution was visibly upset, and the defense began to realize that Raphael's narrative could have a significant impact on the outcome of the trial. With his words, he was not only fighting for his own innocence. He was raising a flag against prejudice that he hoped would inspire others to join together for a greater cause. That night, as Raphael walked home, a new sense of hope washed over him. He knew the road ahead was still long, but for the first time, he felt that he was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for all those who, like him, had been victims of unfair prejudice, and that gave him renewed strength to face whatever came next. With renewed courage, Raphael prepared for the next hearing, where Clara would give her testimony. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, and the anticipation was palpable. He could feel adrenaline coursing through his veins, mixed with a slight nervousness. This would be a decisive day, and the truth he sought was about to be revealed. When Clara entered the room, she radiated a confidence that Raphael hoped would rub off on the judges. He sat near the front, focusing on her expression, looking for a sign that she was ready to face whatever came next. The judge gestured for her to come closer, and as she did, the room fell silent. Clara looked at Raphael, a look of encouragement that gave him strength. "Please tell the court what you witnessed the day Raphael was charged," the defense attorney said, his voice echoing in the tense air. Clara began to recount the events, each word heavy with the gravity of what had occurred. She described how she had seen Raphael in the store, how everything had seemed normal until the security guard had approached him aggressively. The way she spoke, with vivid detail and palpable sincerity, captured the attention of everyone in the room. The jurors listened intently, and even some of the prosecution looked surprised. As she spoke, Raphael noticed the glances they exchanged, a small but significant sign that her words were penetrating the narrative that had been imposed on him. Clara went on to describe the hostility she had felt and how horrified she had been to see Raphael being treated like a criminal, even when there was no reason for it. The emotion in her voice was contagious. Raphael could tell that people were connecting with Clara's truth. He could feel the energy in the room shift, a subtle but powerful movement that spread like a wave. When she finished her testimony, a reverent silence fell over the courtroom. The prosecuting attorney, visibly upset, stood up to question Clara. "Do you really believe that the security guard's approach was inappropriate? And what would you say about Raphael's behavior during the incident?" Clara, without hesitation, replied, "The security guard was aggressive and didn't give Raphael a chance to defend himself." "And Raphael? He was just shopping, like any other customer. I didn't see anything that indicated he was doing anything wrong." The entire room fell silent, and Raphael felt a mixture of gratitude and admiration for Clara. Her determination to tell the truth was more powerful than he could have imagined. After Clara's testimony, the defense attorney made a point of presenting the security footage that confirmed what she had said. The defense presented an analysis of the footage, highlighting how the security guard had behaved. Raphael watched the jurors' reactions closely, who began to exchange looks of disbelief. What had previously seemed like an imminent conviction was turning into a moment of revelation. As the prosecution tried to turn the tables, the defense brought up the injustice of what Raphael had endured. Emotions ran high, and the mood in the courtroom seemed to have changed dramatically. At that crucial moment, Raphael felt the weight he had been carrying begin to lift. Clara's words, the power of her story, and the mounting evidence were forming a new reality. His struggle was finally being heard, and he began to glimpse the possibility of a different outcome. As the hearing came to a close, Raphael left the room with a new sense of hope. Things were changing, and he knew there was still a long way to go. But now he had an army of support and the truth on his side. The turn of events in the trial had reignited a flame within him, a burning desire to continue fighting for justice not only for himself, but for all those who had suffered unjustly. The day of the final judgment arrived, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with anticipation. Raphael felt that the scales of justice were finally tipping in his favor, but the tension in the air was still palpable. He knew that the verdict would be a turning point not only for his life, but for the broader fight against prejudice and injustice. The judge entered the room, and everyone stood up. Raphael observed every detail: the judge's expression, the jurors' gazes, the imposing presence of the prosecuting attorney. With each passing moment, his heart beat faster. He felt that the truth was finally unfolding before him, but the fear of uncertainty still accompanied him. When the judge asked everyone to sit down, Raphael took a deep breath. The defense attorney summarized the case, reiterating the testimony and evidence that had been presented, emphasizing the inconsistencies in the prosecution's allegations. He looked the jurors in the eye and, with a tone of sincerity, said, "This is not just a case of an innocent man being wrongly accused. It's about all of us. It's about how we should behave in the face of distrust, prejudice, and lack of compassion." The defense brought up statistics about racism and social injustice, making the jurors feel like they were part of something bigger. Raphael listened, and the lawyer's words resonated in his mind, each one an echo of his own struggle. The prosecution, in turn, felt pressured. The prosecution attorney tried to turn the situation around, presenting arguments that disregarded the strength of the evidence. But Raphael realized that the jurors were already thinking differently. The narrative was changing, and he felt the energy in the courtroom shift in his favor. Anticipation grew as the judge asked the jurors to retire to deliberate. Raphael sat, the tension in his chest almost unbearable. Clara, at his side, took his hand, and they exchanged a look that said it all. Hopes and fears intertwined. It was as if, in that moment, their souls were united in a common search for justice. After what seemed like an eternity, the jurors returned. The judge asked them to speak, and Raphael's heart raced. He didn't know what to expect, but he was ready to listen. "We have a verdict," the head juror said, his voice firm. "Regarding the defendant, Rafael da Silva, we find him not guilty." A wave of relief and joy ran through Raphael's body. He couldn't believe he had finally made it. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Clara began to cry. Raphael pulled her into a tight hug, unable to contain his emotions. The feeling of freedom was there, within his reach. The judge banged his gavel, trying to restore order in the courtroom, but Raphael was in a whirlwind of emotions. He felt as if he had been reborn, as if all the pain and humiliation he had faced had finally been erased by a breath of hope. As he walked away from the table, Raphael looked at the jurors. He saw compassion on their faces and understood that they had been touched by his story. In that moment, he realized that this wasn't just his fight. It was everyone's fight who faced similar injustices. He decided that he would use his newfound freedom to be a voice for those still trapped in the cycle of prejudice and discrimination. As he left the courthouse, the sky was clear and sunny, and Raphael felt like he was finally free. He was determined to turn the pain he had felt into fuel for change. Through his struggle, he hoped to inspire others to speak out, to fight, and to never give up in their pursuit of truth. The feeling of freedom that enveloped Raphael was almost euphoric. As he walked out of the courtroom, he had not only left behind the chains of injustice, but also the pain and humiliation that accompanied it. The bright day and the birdsong seemed to echo his new reality. He took a deep breath, feeling the gentle breeze on his face, a sign that new beginnings were to come. After the verdict, news spread quickly, and social media became a bustling space of support and solidarity. Raphael received messages from friends and even strangers celebrating his victory. Each notification on his phone was like a warm hug, an acknowledgement that his struggle had not been in vain. He finally felt welcomed by a community that had previously seemed distant. Raphael decided he couldn't keep this experience to himself. He wanted to use his story to help others overcome their own struggles. With the help of Clara, who had become his ally and friend, they began planning a series of speaking engagements in local schools and communities. The idea was to share his story, not only to inform, but to inspire those who were still fighting injustice. The first event was scheduled for 2 weeks after the trial. Raphael sat down at a cafe with Clara, discussing what he wanted to convey. He wanted to talk about the importance of resilience, truth, and the strength that each person has to face adversity. "You have a powerful story, Raphael. People need to hear it," Clara said, looking him in the eye. She was full of enthusiasm and belief in the impact they could have. "Let's use this to raise awareness and bring about change. You can be the voice so many need." The day of the talk arrived, and Raphael was nervous but also excited. The auditorium was filled with young people eager to hear his story. When it was his turn to speak, his nervousness gave way to a determination that surprised him. He began by telling about the day of the incident, the pain of humiliation, and how helpless he had felt. However, as he spoke, he also shared the hope that had emerged amidst the chaos. "I am a free man now, but I am not here just to tell you about my victory. I am here to remind all of you that we must not allow injustice to define us. We must stand up, speak out, and above all, unite against any form of discrimination," Raphael said, his voice resonating throughout the auditorium. The audience was attentive. He saw faces light up with each word, felt the connection growing between him and the people who were there, willing to listen. Raphael addressed the difficulties that many face daily, but emphasized the importance of staying strong and believing in yourself. At the end of the talk, people stood up and applauded. Raphael felt a wave of emotion and gratitude. Not only had he shared his story, but he had created a safe space where others could talk about their experiences as well. After that day, Raphael continued to give speeches in different places, always bringing a message of hope and transformation. He began working with organizations that fought against racism and discrimination, contributing to campaigns that promoted inclusion and social justice. With each event, his support network grew, and he realized that he had found a new purpose in life. As he walked through a plaza one day, watching children play and families gather together, Raphael reflected on his journey. The pain that had once consumed him now served as a springboard to something greater. He had transformed humiliation into strength, injustice into action, and sadness into hope. And in doing so, he had not only healed himself, but had also become a light to those still walking in darkness. Raphael's impact on communities began to expand, and his speaking engagements were no longer just local events. They became movements that attracted the attention of media outlets and organizations across the country. He was becoming a respected voice in the fight against discrimination and injustice, and this brought him a new form of recognition that he had never imagined before. At a special event, Raphael was invited to speak at a national conference on human rights. He was nervous, but at the same time, excited. This was an opportunity to reach even more people and impact the fight against injustice on a larger scale. He knew his story could help inspire and mobilize others to join the cause. On the day of the conference, the auditorium was packed with activists, journalists, and civil rights advocates. When it was his turn to speak, Raphael looked out at the crowd. He saw faces that reflected pain, hope, and determination to fight. Inspired, he began to share his journey, from being humiliated in court to struggling to find purpose in life. He emphasized the importance of empathy and collective action in the fight for a more just world. Each of us has the power to change the narrative, Raphael said passionately. We must not allow injustice to keep us silent. Every voice counts, every action matters. And together, we can tear down walls and build bridges. After his presentation, people surrounded him, eager to congratulate him and share their own stories of struggle. Raphael felt that the connection he had made with these people was deep and meaningful. He knew that the fight for justice was not just an individual one, but a collective battle that required unity and solidarity. Over time, Raphael became a respected activist, participating in panels and discussions across the country. He founded an organization dedicated to supporting young people facing discrimination, offering mentoring and training programs. He wanted these young people to know that no matter their circumstances, they had the power to transform their lives and impact the world around them. During his journey, Raphael also found inspiration in other people's stories of overcoming obstacles. He began collecting these stories and soon decided to publish a book. The title, Voices of Hope, Stories of Overcoming and Resilience, would be a collection of stories from people who, like him, faced adversity and stood up against injustice. As he worked on the book, Raphael realized that his own story was just one of many. Each page he wrote connected him even more to a network of human beings who, in their daily struggles, found ways to rise and shine. The act of writing became not only a way to share his experience, but also a means of honoring all those who had faced injustice and emerged stronger. The book launch was a huge success. Raphael organized an event where he not only shared his story, but also gave voice to others who had contributed their stories. The atmosphere was celebratory, and the positive energy was contagious. He was surrounded by friends, family, and even people who were admiring him for the first time. In that moment, Raphael realized that his legacy was not just about his personal struggle, but about the change he was helping to bring about in his community. As he looked out at the audience, Raphael felt that through his words and actions, he had lit a flame of hope and inspiration. He had overcome humiliation and injustice, transforming pain into meaningful purpose. And in doing so, he had become a beacon for all those still struggling.